this is the first time I've ever even publicly been like, yeah, this is exactly what happened. This is how stupid it was, but yet this is how much it affected me at that young age. What basically had happened is that the person I was working with, who I had all the trust and faith in the world in, found a way to implant a virus into Time Hell.
Welcome to AOL. Welcome to AOL Underground.
Please state your handle and the years you were active on AOL.
Yeah, my handles when I was active were Surf Kahuna and then Mac Diablo. And years active, gosh, I'm going to say 94, 95 to 97, maybe 98. I think 98 might be pushing it.
What's a kahuna?
A kahuna is a Hawaiian term essentially for the chief. The term was actually given to me by my mother. I was in 5th grade. I was actually going into 5th grade when I decided to sign up for AOL. So, 11 years old at the time. And I wanted my mommy's help. I was like, what's a cool name? And she's like, oh, it's Surf Kahuna, like the kahuna of surfing, the big chief awesome guy of the village and surfing. But it's not surfing the waves, it's surfing the information superhighway. And I was like, that's cool. And we came up with Surf Kahuna together. But of course, no one got it. Everyone just thought that I actually surfed.
Yeah, actually, that's what I would have assumed too. But your mom's really good at coming up with handles. That's amazing.
Yeah, she was a kindergarten teacher for many, many years. And part of that is having to be creative. So
that's cool. Okay, so when did you first use a computer?
First time using a computer is going to be, I'm going to say 2nd or 3rd grade. And there's a bit of a sad undertone here, so pardon that. But my father wasn't around a whole lot. And when he did show up, there were certain things that he would kind of want to expose me to. And whatever those things were, I would run with them for the rest of my life. And one of those was computers. He went to an adult night class, to learn how to do computering, as he used to call it. And I was sitting there learning more than the adults there and loving it. And when I would go over to his place, he would have these buddies who would give him games on floppy disks. And he'd be like, here, do something with this. I'd be like, all right, cool. And so computers just became a big thing. And for many years, I had access, for maybe a year or two, I only had access at his house. But then, at school, we started doing keyboard typing lessons and stuff like that. I got up to 50 words a minute in 4th grade. I was obsessed, just absolutely obsessed from that point forward.
Cool. Would you be able to talk a little bit about some of the cool stuff you did on the school computers?
Yeah. So school computers, it was really in 5th grade where I started I don't know if the term blossoming really fits here, but what I loved to do was use ResEdit. And that's because most of the computers I was on at the time, I was a Mac user. So I'm sure a number of your listeners right now are like, oh, dude, what? Like a Mac guy.
Well, for those of us that did not use Mac, what is ResEdit?
Yeah, so the Macintosh operating system, the hierarchical file system, HFS, differed completely from FAT32 or the eventual NTFS back in the day. And the files on your system, especially executables, if you will, and the classic Mac OS system, we're talking Mac OS 6.x and 7.x, well, up through 8 and 9 also. They used 2 different forks in the data stream, basically. One of them was the actual data stream itself, the code stream, and then one of them was what's known as the resource fork. The resource fork is where literally you would have all of the damn graphics and sounds and even the menu, the pull down menus, everything you could think of that would be more of a visual element, right, to the program, tool, utility, whatever it was, would actually be stored on disk in the resource fork. So in that fork, what we ended up with the ability to do is modify all of that with a tool called ResEdit. And I learned about ResEdit from a buddy of mine and who I met in San Jose in the Silicon Valley. We'll get to that, I'm sure, coming up here. And he showed me hey, look at these cool things you could do. So I took that probably the wrong, a little too far. So at school, it would be things say you launch a tool or an application or a game. we had this game called Number Munchers. Any Mac user from my generation should recognize that name right away. Number Munchers. Oh, you learn math by playing a game with these little guys who munch numbers as you move around the screen. And in Number Munchers, I basically, the first thing I did was modify the file menu. So literally when you execute the application, right, instead of saying file at the top of the screen, it would say, fuck you. And so I did that on my school computer, and it probably was not the best idea because it was obvious who done did it.
Why was it obvious?
Oh, because I was the computer guy already at that time, in 5th grade. I was already, whenever the teacher had issues, she would ask me, like, how do we fix this? And I was always on the computers no matter what. I'd stay in from, recess and just be on the computers and be a computer nerd the whole time. And so,
So they just assumed it was you, and you were just like, yeah, it was me.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, I always denied it. No, I was young and dumb-minded. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Nice, perfect.
But I would modify things like, the resource fork on the old Mac applications. You would have literally sound files, and they would be SND space was the OS type identifier for the resource fork. So for anyone listening, you can go look up, like literally just Google resource fork.
Is that like an alternate data stream in Windows land?
Yes, ADS was actually developed as a carryover to offer backwards compatibility with resource forks. That's why they were built in the first place.
Cool.
So if you Google resource fork and just go right to the Wikipedia article, then you'll see a designation under resource identifiers. And you'll see that there are 4-letter identifiers like dialog boxes and a program were stored in a resource fork type of DITL. So if you open ResEdit, and you opened up a Macintosh application and you double clicked on DITL, any dialog boxes that were in that program and that tool, you would see them. You'd be able to modify them, right? The window, what it looked like, the size of the window, the buttons, the name of the buttons, and for that matter, if you knew what you were doing, what code was actually executed when you clicked the buttons.
So this is like a hexedit GUI on steroids or something, right?
Yeah. I got befuddled by my own words. I've never, ever seen any type of tool that provided that ability to modify something in a standard operating system environment, right? It's literally a what you see is what you get. It's a WYSIWYG editor for like all the damn things, Windows tools and programs and games and malware for that matter. They have resources. You can have resources, as they call them, embedded, but it's nothing like it was back then. So I would take the images or graphics and I'd modify them. I had an old QuickCam. If anyone remembers the Connectix QuickCam, and it was a grayscale horrible webcam, like the first one that we had in the Mac world at least. And I would take pictures like around the class, and I would then like splice them into like some of our our programs and tools. So you randomly just see a classmate when it's supposed to be like some learning program or something. And it was just really fun. It felt like I was a hacker, right? Now, you look back at it now and you're like, were you a hacker? Well, by the definition of the term, yes, absolutely. You felt like you had this God level access to modify what you wanted. In reality, it was just this really easy and readily available method to, kind of screw around with things. And so I ran with that. I loved it. And that learning how that worked and functioned. And then over the years, starting to identify how that's not really the way the world works with most binary executions in most environments, but also learning how you can manipulate things today, right? And how the cracking scene has evolved over the years. That's been a big part of what's motivated me. And that initially learning about ResEdit and tinkering with it in the classroom is something that I loved it.
That's really cool. And then you said there was a scripting element. Not to get too deep into this, but I think I kind of want to. What is the scripting component of it?
So ResEdit itself wasn't really scripted.
You said you could invoke scripts or something at some point.
Oh, so there was the OS type of code, which was the actual functions themselves that made up the program. You could simply manipulate the other resources to point to different bits of code. So if I had a dialog box that would pop up, and if I clicked one of 3 buttons, it would do something, you could alternate those or change those to some other function or bit of code. So essentially, let's say that you had a box that popped up, and this is one of the things I did in my classrooms. If you had a box that popped up and you clicked the button, it said, there's one button, right? And that button, when you clicked it, would, quit the program or let you get to the next screen or whatever, right? you would just basically make that button launch the same window that was just opened. So in other words, there's no damn way to close that window, right? So I do stupid things like that, and just have fun with things. If there were buttons on a window, or if there was a link, or not a link, it wasn't like, they weren't really called links back then, but something you clicked on, right? And a tool that would progress, I guess, or exit or whatever, I would sometimes just remove that functionality so that if you click the button, it wouldn't do anything, and people would just be stuck like, I don't get it, what's going on? So just stupid little things that were fun and gave me this feeling of like, I can control this environment, and I was enamored with it.
So that's really cool. You got to manipulate a GUI application, I think they call them FAT applications today, but like a desktop application, right? And then you found AOL and you started manipulating that. How did you find AOL? Because it seems like then you made programs once you got to AOL too, right? Or so you started manipulating the GUI, as it were, right?
I lived in a little kind of farming community, really, when I was younger, and it was an hour south of San Jose, California, in the United States. So the Silicon Valley, Saratoga, Cupertino, Sunnyvale. These are all names that folks who have lived there like, oh yeah, that's right in the heart, of Silicon Valley. Like Apple's based in Cupertino, And I lived in this little kind of podunk town, and then all of a sudden we moved up to San Jose for 5th grade. And when I moved there, I met this guy. We were playing roller hockey one day, and his name was Gary. He was much older than me. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years older than me, right? I'm 11. So he's like maybe already in high school or at least junior high. And he at some point he mentioned, oh, I do a lot of computer stuff, and I was like, oh, really? I love computers. And it kind of escalated to, he's like, hey, have you ever been online? And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What the hell's online? What are you talking about, fool?
Online?
Yeah, online. He showed me BBSs. So we dialed into some BBSs. That's where I really, cut my teeth on, like, let's get online. So we were dialing into these BBSs, and I was like, what in the world? You can leave messages for people? Like, this is awesome. And freaking, I can go download files, like 5 kilobyte files over, however long. And it was just like, this is crazy. You can share games with people? Like, what? Even if it was shareware that you're sharing back and forth, we didn't even have a consistent place to go get shareware. Like you had to buy magazines.
The shareware was pretty good.
Yeah,
it was like $7 for a magazine to get your disc of shareware, right?
Yeah, right. And even back then, we're still talking floppy disks mostly to get a hold of this stuff. So it opened my eyes to, wow, this is just online community. Like we're digitally communicating, and oh yeah. That eventually led in 5th grade to him showing me AOL and being like, hey, by the way, check this out. So when he was on AOL, he didn't really show me a lot of the wares scene, if you will. We'll just call it the scene. But he spoke about it, and he would show me all the cool things that he got from it. And so it got to the point where I had this 80 megabyte SCSI 2 external hard drive that was like, I don't know, man, like a foot by 1.5 feet. Like, it was massive. I don't know how many inches. It was huge. And 80 megabytes, right? And I would put this in my backpack, and I would rollerblade over to his house. And it was actually really funny because, I'm 11 and he's like, I don't know, 14, 15, 16. My mom used to always be like, is he a toucher? No, he's not a toucher. She used to always be like, why does this older dude always want to hang out with you? And it was very hard for me to describe the fact that he's an absolute, socially inept computer nerd. And I love computers, and all he wants is someone to sit there and listen to his dumb computer crap. And all I want in life right now is to listen to his dumb computer crap. It was, oh man, you're going to go hang out with Gary again?
Yeah, Gary Bear,
really funny. Yeah, get my buddy. He's my big buddy. Oh my God. But I would go over to his house, and then he would just load up crap on my hard drive, and I'd take it home. He gave me these, back in the day, that Macintosh system used what are known as extensions and control panels. And when the Mac computer would load up, you would actually see, as the OS was booting, at the bottom of your screen, you would see all the different extensions would literally load up an icon. And on many of our scene users' machines, you would see like an entire screen, 640 by 40, if that, right, would be loaded with these icons, and they would slowly load in as they were loaded into memory, right? So he would give me these cool things. Like there was one where Oscar the Grouch would pop up and sing you a song whenever you would empty the trash can. And it was just this, and again, was that something that was hacking? No, you're just modifying, you're just throwing on an extension that some person wrote, right? It's not that big of a deal. But to me, as I was learning about Res Edit and I was learning about digitally communicating with all these people online, and all of a sudden I'm making it so that when I empty my trash, I get a little song sung to me by my childhood. Like, it all just kept interest. I was more and more interested and just wanted to learn as much as I absolutely could. So he introduced me to Dark Castle. If anyone remembers Dark Castle, the game, it was originally on the Mac. It was just amazing. There are many ports over time. The Sega Genesis eventually had a Dark Castle. There are many people who have fond memories of the game. He introduced me to that, and these were all things that he was getting either from BBSs or from AOL when he started using that, and then just sharing with me. He would basically get a bunch of stuff, and over a couple of days, I would show up. He would copy it all over to my stuff, and then he would sit there and just show it to me. Like, here, check this out. Here, have you ever seen Adobe Photoshop? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, look, you can edit stuff. I'm like, what? And it was like this perfect guide to my computing life, that I obtained by moving up to the Silicon Valley and luckily running into this guy.
That's so cool to have somebody to teach you stuff, because if you have to kind of learn on your own or just like maybe stumble in the chat rooms or something to figure it out, but to actually have somebody there to show you that's really awesome. So I have in my notes here, EasyScript and OneClick. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So the Mac scene that we had was not as, well, first off, was not as prevalent because, why would it be in terms of just general market saturation and whatever the heck. So we didn't have, like you had the Chronic on previously, right? We didn't have tools like those. Like, we didn't have AOL. Get out of here. Okay. But at one point we got AOL for free. It was called AOL #4 free. And it was basically a tool that you would load in, and it would allow you to use AOL for free. And DeChronic, by the way, was talking about how he actually invented that whole process on the episode, which was fantastic hearing it from his mouth. Essentially, you're in the free area, but you lose the restrictions because you're no longer having windows that are simply invisible, which security-wise, like, great programming, great development, early AOL team, no thought to potential tinkering or hacking whatsoever. But AOL for free would get us on to AOL. Well, that's cute. For free, probably, hence why it has that name. And over time, the Mac community was seen as less than, for many reasons, aside that, our games sucked and we weren't on PCs with all the cool software, but we didn't really have progs, if you will. Whether you want to call it whatever term you want to use, let's go with progs for now, right? We didn't have them. So eventually, we had some things. But eventually, a company called West Code Software released a tool called OneClick. And OneClick was a tool that its whole purpose was automation, right? You could build a palette, as they called it, which would be a little floating window on the screen that you could enable or disable with a hotkey or whatever you wanted. And then in that palette, or on those palettes, because you could have multiple loaded, you could then script out activities. So you could basically click on something and then have it perform a series of activities. Well, that scripting methodology was two different engines that were interrelated. One of them was provided by West Code Software. It's called EasyScript. And if you actually go to FOR528.com/OneClick, if you go to that link, it actually redirects to a page. It's still up and live now. I love it. It's on designright.com, and it's called Working with OneClick. So you can probably just Google Working with OneClick, and it would probably be the very, very top thing you'd see there. If you click on it, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is OneClick. You see some images and things of that nature. So for anyone listening, if you don't have a visual, I'll kind of walk through the idea of it, right? You generate palettes, or other people write palettes. You download those palettes and you use them in certain situations. You would have a palette for MS Word. You would have, well, back then, no, it wasn't MS Word. It was more actually ClarisWorks. That was before it was even AppleWorks, before they bought Claris. So I forget what year this is. We're going back in the day. So whatever tool or application you had, you could automate things, right? So anyways, their EasyScript was just that. It was easy. It was very easy to use. And the cool thing about EasyScript, aside from the fact that it really, really aimed to be what I guess some folks probably still call a fourth generation programming language, right? Or is it really a programming, a scripting environment? It's meant to be more like English driven right? Phrases and sentences that kind of make damn sense. So if you were to look at the example that's on the page I mentioned here, right? Working with one click, the web page is still active on designright.com. There's a section, what's it called? The button editor. And right before it, right below it, you see a script. And the script is really simple, right? The first part of it says on mouse up, and then you have indentation. So that's a function, meaning that whenever the mouse goes up, you do that thing, right? And then the next 3 lines, variable global, the main file. The main file equals process.selection, call process finder drag, end mouse up. So in other words, and the next part, the drag and drop is calling process finder drag. So it's enabling integration with AppleScript, technically, that Apple had provided. And for many years back then, most people had no idea how to use it or what the heck it was. But it was Apple's automation scripting utility and things of that nature. On a current day Macintosh computer, it's literally you just go to automation, the application, and then that's AppleScript. That's how you design automation, right? So this script not only was easy to use, but they had a tab, and you can see it on this website, right? There's a tab called script. And on script, you would then see all the different basically functions or methods, if you will, that were available inside EasyScript, right? And they're all like, there's one called button. And if you provide button and then whatever parameters button wanted, and they would just define, and it was very well documented, right? Here's how you make a button. Here's what that button can do, right? On click, and then assign that to the button. Now the click that. So for anyone who's done old VB form design, you're like, yeah, I get it, dude. I get it. It's VB for the Mac, basically, right? Is what it is. So VB 3.4 status. And so this particular tool, I don't know who came up with it. I don't know who it was in the community in the Mac scene who was like, hey, we're going to do this now, right? I don't know what the first tool was. I tried to research it. I can't find it. If anyone in the AOL scene, if anyone who listens to this, if anyone in the re-AOL community, whatever, knows or can find out, that would be awesome. But someone at some point was like, hey, I made this tool, but you have to download this software, right? So then everyone started ripping off one click, and that became the norm. And it very quickly became the norm because by the time I heard about it, and I was like on, in the scene every damn day for hours. By the time I heard about it, there were already like 4 or 5 different random palettes floating around. And so using EasyScript, we then had the ability to integrate with AppleScript. And then on top of that, if we wanted to make any type of cutesy little modification to the AOL client itself, we would use ResEdit. And then there were a couple different patching programs back in the Mac days. And ResEdit even had a native method to do it. So I could take ResEdit, I could open up the AOL 3.0, I think this is more than 2.0, right? Days. I also think my years active may have been off. I don't remember. I was in 5th grade, whatever year that was. I think it's around 94-ish, 93, 94. You would basically go into the client, make modifications in ResEdit, save a patch of that, provide the patch, and provide your palette. And then that way, the people who want to use it could apply your patch to their AOL client. And then the AOL client would look as though it's been, modified with all this cool other new stuff. But really, it's just resource fork editing and a visual, cute little tool where you just go double click and you just like, this doesn't no longer says AOL help menu. Now it says, AOL will burn or, whatever. And these palettes over time became more and more advanced. And, let's be honest, the Mac scene is very similar to how I see the Windows development process these days in terms of security features. It all came from It all came from the Windows scene, right? The PC scene, as they were called back in the day. These days, Microsoft doesn't engineer a lot of their security protections. They get them from the Linux kernel crew. That's who makes them. And then they go, oh, that's cool. And they just rip it. They're like, oh, we're going to do that in our operating system. That's pretty much what we did. So as these palettes started coming out, and as folks like myself who are really interested in, saying programming or development and knowing what I know now as a programmer, right? It's like, come on, dude, were you really a programmer? But back then, yeah, hell yeah, you were. Absolutely, you were. So being able to manipulate other people's palettes is what immediately drew my attention. And part of that was because it was so often that there was no damn QA on these things. I mean, first off, they're probably all other 5th grade, 6th grade, 11 and 12-year-old kids doing this. Some of the folks like the Chronic was a couple years older than my generation. And so he had a more stable foundation and a better head in his shoulders than, an 11 or 12-year-old kid. But when these things would come out, when things would not work, my immediate thing was, well, that's stupid. Let's fix it. And then I'd fix it. And then I would just use it and be like, okay, cool. And then eventually I got to the point where I was annoyed because you'd have to have 5 or 6 loaded to do the things you wanted to do. So why not make my own? Yeah. And then that's kind of what kicked that off.
So you decided you were going to make your own palette and group of scripts that went with that palette and then create a patch. Could you have a palette inside the AOL client, or you could just manipulate, I guess you would use ResEdit to manipulate the AOL client, and then you'd have your kind of palette on the side with all of your functions?
Yep, that's it. Yeah, the palette itself would usually be the moniker, but we would also, not all palettes, not all prog developers or whatever you want to call them in our scene, would even manipulate the AOL client with ResEdit. A lot of them were just a palette, and the palette would be just a little floating window, and you could hide it or not hide it, with a hotkey shortcut, whatever. And so these would come out and they would be called whatever the hell, right? There's a number of them that you can find for download. Unfortunately, I didn't have time given some other projects, which I really wish I did, but maybe at some point I'll get some screenshots or like video recording and all that of one-click actively running and some of these palettes that were running. One of them, there's a guy who went by White, and he had a couple different ones that were pretty well known. Some of the earlier ones that were pretty well known. And so anyways, looking through the palettes, I wanted to come up with my own. And so, some would be called something hell, and some would just be called whatever, prog or app or script. It's the same concept in the PC realm. We named it whatever the heck. And I came up with a concept of, I wanted one that would save time. I wanted one that would enable me to do what I wanted to do and not enable me to dick around with stupid things in order to do what I wanted to do. So I thought, the 11 or 12-year-old brain was like, I'm going to call it time hell. And the idea is that but when it first started up, I had not yet seen a palette that would animate, if you will, because it was just a palette. It was supposed to be a palette with buttons. But one of the things I found in EasyScript was a way to click on a button or even a keystroke, whatever, right? And what it would do is you could manipulate the buttons and their visibility on the screen and actually move them pixel wise. So some palette came out with something where it was like a button would go from one place to the other. And then I looked at that and I was like, wait, what? Could we make this like slowly move? Like, will it look like it's animating? It looked like crap, don't get me wrong, but it could happen. And so I had like, at first it would pop up and it would just be like a palette with text. And it would say something like, welcome to the time vortex. And if you didn't know the key command to press, you wouldn't know, they wouldn't do anything. Or then again, you could just go check the script editor and be like, oh, that's the keys I need to press. Like, duh. But if you press the key combination, all of a sudden the buttons would show up. And then someone in the scene found a way to make it so that you could have a palette that would slide out. It would look like it's sliding out. In other words, you could have buttons, but not have the entire thing visible on the palette. So you would just change the size of the palette, basically size and location of it, but it would make it seem like things were sliding out and like different sections, if you will, that were opening up, right? In a VB form, it's much more, of an obvious idea, and it's actually built to design that way with different forms and how they interact with one another. In this case, you're just manipulating what's viewable and what's not at a given time. So my idea behind Time Hell was take all the cool stuff that I had seen, take all the ideas that I had at the time, and it's all the same crap we've seen year after year. It's all the same stupid things, breaking into rooms, a mass mailer, whatever the heck it was. My big thing was not just QA, but error checking. Because things either worked or they didn't. And many times they just didn't work. And you had to try them over and over and over and over and over with different people's tools because there was no error handling whatsoever. There's no error checking or error handling. So I found ways to do things like check a window name to see if it spawned within a certain amount of time. And if it didn't spawn, well, that shit didn't work. We're going to try that again. Right? So at the time, I wasn't seeing that a lot. And I thought I had this great idea. We're going to save ourselves time by having our tool check itself, which, again, any developer these days, you're like, yeah, stupid. That's that's how you make a program. Like, what the hell? But we didn't have that back then, at least in the Mac scene. We really didn't. And so I had this idea that I was going to be this amazing tool developer and that I was going to build something that everyone could go, oh, wow, like this really works. And I could get people interested to work with me. And that's one of the things I also wanted to do. It wasn't just build a name for myself, because what 11 to 13-year-old doesn't want to build a name for themselves online? Duh, right? But also it was I want to be part of the community. I want to play with the big boys and gals, right? I want to earn their respect, but I want to work with them. So my thought, and this is, again, the brain of an 11, 12-year-old, was if I show them that I have something that's unique, I could get them to work with me on Time Hell. It may have been a great idea. It may have been a completely asinine, stupid little child idea. I'll never know, because I ran into a major, major problem that eventually shaped who I am today. And that's why we're here with this, essentially this origin story podcast, right? But that was the idea. I had a working tool and I had some error checking. I was looking for window names, and I was also integrating it with AppleScript so that I could play sounds from the AOL client. And I was doing things with ResEdit where I could have a patch to ResEdit where I would add in some S&D files to ResEdit, to the AOL client itself. And then I'd be able to click something in one click and it would manipulate that resource via AppleScript in the client. So it was like I had all these lofty ideas that I wasn't seeing yet in the scene. And I thought I was cool, and then I was going to be cool, and then I ended up being a fool.
So Surf Kahuna had built a program, and he thought he met a new online buddy, just like how you had a buddy before, right? And this buddy was going to help you beta test it, and then you were gonna, like, everyone would know who Surf Kahuna was, and it would be super awesome, right? That was the plan. And then what happened?
You nailed it 100%. That was the exact plan in my mind at the time. And I wanted to produce something that was polished. So I found someone online, and I wasn't really looking for someone. It was just someone in the scene. And honestly, I don't remember his name. I don't remember where he was from. I don't remember a damn thing about him whatsoever to this day. And I truly believe it is the number one example in my personal life of, as they say, blocking something out. I'm sure that at some point I'll be on a chair in some psychology, some psych's office, and they'll be like, I'm going to count backwards, and I'll be like, his name is John, that bastard. I'm sure, but it's weird that I don't remember much. But what I do remember is we found each other because there was some mass mail, and we were both trying to get on it, and we both didn't get on it. And then we were like, I'll help you get the next one. And he said, I'll help you get the next one. I was like, cool. So if you remember mass mails, it was, this is before even before the IRC days, where it'd be like, you type in bang, burp, 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 and, the server will respond to you via DCC chat, and then we could do whatever you want and get your files, right? It didn't work that way on AOL. It was like, hey, I'm doing a mass mail. Type this in. I've got X number of spots available, or it sucks for you. Because you couldn't send mail to X number of people at a time on AOL. I don't remember what that number was. I don't know if you do. But it was something chintzy, right? 50, 100, I don't know what it was, 1,000 even, but whatever it was, you would miss mass mails. So they'd be announced in our certain chats, and if you didn't get on it, you'd be like, damn. And you would think your world was going to end, just because that one mass mail, you'd be like, what was going to be in there? Oh, tools and programs and different progs and porn. Like, you never knew what you were missing out on. So we were trying to help each other out. We started just communicating online, and we started sending each other tools back and forth. And it was someone that I grew to trust over a matter of, back then it took weeks, right? Your best buddies online. So when I decided I'm going to push forward with this, I'm going to spend a lot of time on this, then I brought him in to help me. And he was an amazing resource for beta testing and for giving me feedback. And we worked together for, I want to say it was a solid 6 months, because I was in 6th grade at this time. I was, I guess, 12 going on to 13. If not, actually, by this time, I might have been right around 13. Yeah, I was around 13. So I was, and it's funny because I have a daughter who's 11 now, and I'm thinking about all the things I was doing at that age. I'm like, oh, crap. Oh, no. But I had all these things that we were working on, and we were trying to keep it hush-hush. We were not advertising like there's these cool new things we're doing that we're really not seeing, or we weren't really going like, hey, this is going to be the best of the best of the best, because we wanted to be able to say, hey, by the way, this is going to be the best, and you'll see it in like, a couple days. And that's what we were going for. So I had all the faith and trust in the world in this person. And that was misplaced, it turns out. So anyone who grew up on a Mac, or even if you use Macs now as your daily driver, right? Most people think Macs don't get malware, right? How would Mac get malware? There's no Mac malware. Well, viruses back then, I guess I should say. But it turns out that they did. And I really didn't know that. I really didn't focus on that. It wasn't something that was ever a thing to me, right? So I had spent all this time, and just like, I had my baby. I had my little time hell, and I remember I called it version 0.9 beta. 0.9b, because I didn't want to call it 1.0 because it wasn't quite there, but I wanted the masses to see it, and then I was going to use that feedback to make version 1.0. That was a big thing for me. So v0.9 lowercase b. That's the way I styled it. I'll remember it to this day. I can't remember the guy's name, but I remember that. And I was like, here it is. Like, yes. We were going to release it as a Stuff It archive. Stuff It that sounds funny to say out loud. That is a term from the old Mac scene. So Stuff It was a group, Aladdin, right? Was who made that?
Yeah, I think so.
A .sit or sit was a compression archive type that the Mac users used for all the way up until basically OS X, to be honest. Like, you'd buy commercial software and it would come as a .sit file on disk sometimes, right? So we didn't use zips, we didn't use tars or gzip, we used sit files. And so in that sit, there was going to be the palette, there was going to be a README, and there was going to be the patch for AOL. And it was going to be as simple as that, right? We were going to start mass mailing it around. We made some ASCII art behind it. Like, I manually did some ASCII art stuff, and time hell version, beta released to the public. And I was just like so excited. Here it is. This is my moment. People are going to know who I am. Yes. Right. Obviously, anyone listening up to this point, you're probably thinking, I never heard of Surf Kahuna or Mac Diablo. Like, who's this fool? Right. Oh, I don't think I mentioned Mac Diablo yet. More of that coming up about 5 minutes here. But who the hell was this Surf Kahuna guy? Well, there's a reason you never heard of me. And here it is. We released the software in a mass mail one day, and I was so like emotional that I was like breathing like heavy, and I was just like, oh, here it is. I'm shaking with anticipation, right? And lo and behold, it wasn't very long until the first person started scrolling, not just mentioning, but scrolling, every minute or whatever the hell. And all the damn chats that I was popping in and out of, that time hell is a virus, and that Surf Kahuna is trying to basically shut down your PC. No, they didn't have a solid grasp on really what viruses even were, but so just like, basically, this is pure crap. It's a hoax. Stay away from it. Don't touch it. And it was constantly being scrolled. And I started to freak out immediately for obvious reasons. And I didn't know what the hell was going on. Without going into all the, what happened over the next 48 hours, what basically had happened is that the person I was working with, who I had all the trust and faith in the world in, found a way to implant a virus into time hell. And I was too young, I guess, at the time. Maybe it was just the Mac scene. I never even thought a virus would be a potential problem. And that I didn't even have an antivirus client or agent on my machine. Like, why the hell would I? I was running macOS, early version of macOS 7. Why would I have that? So turns out there was a virus called MDEF. And if you just look up MDEF Apple, you'll probably find, well, yeah, that's actually a data type, but you'll eventually see the MDEF virus. You can also just type in MDEF virus. And it infects the menu definition of resource forks, which is why it was called MDEF, by the way, because MDEF stands for menu define. And it was basically a resource that was included in with the patch that we had provided. And it wasn't necessarily even something that would be a massive problem. If you look up what MDEF does, and you're like, okay, well, that's not that big of a damn deal, right? What the problem is that all of a sudden it was just spitting out on all these machines that this is infected with a virus. That was really the problem, right? So the effects of it's pretty damn simple. Antivirus would pick it up and say that you couldn't remove it, you couldn't fix the problem, and people just started freaking out and stopping and deleting everything. So my mass mails were all shut down. Everything was rebuked, and my name was just completely. Everyone for a minute, definitely in the Mac scene, knew who Surf Kahuna was because he was the asshole who was trying to ruin the scene. That's who I became at the time, and I was trying to do the exact opposite. So you can imagine that it just absolutely blew apart my little world, and I literally had my first occurrence of like depression. When I say like depression, let me replace that with like legit outright damn depression. I wasn't getting out of bed. I was fucked up, dude. It hurt. That shit hurt, man. And I basically trusted someone who I shouldn't have, and I also was not trained enough, intelligent enough, however you want to put it, to recognize what was going on until it was too late. And that's why no one has ever heard of Time Hell. The project completely died after that. It was basically pointless to try to continue in any way, shape, or form. And I was just stuck. You know, I would go online and I would get people instant messaging me, telling me what a piece of shit that I was. And it was just, everything sucked. That was my online persona. Back then I felt like that's who I was in the digital realm, because it was. And that person was seen as a piece of shit in the community. And I had to live with that. And it sounds funny now, but then it was serious. It sucked. It sucked. It sucked a lot.
But then, like a phoenix, you were reborn as Mac Diablo. So you had the idea, like, okay, well, I obviously can't be Surf Kahuna anymore. Did your mom give you the new handle, or did you come up with the Mac Diablo on your own? Or?
That sounds funny. It sounds almost like a diss. Like, did your mommy help you with that? First off, yes.
Oh my God. I was joking.
My mommy did help me. Well, that's the funny thing. Is like, yeah, she totally did. Now I'm 13. I don't think I was 14 yet, but I'm 13. I still was like, hey, Mom, I got to pick a new name. So there's something that we actually passed over that occurred before moving to Mac Diablo. So I'm trying to deal with being this person. And over a number of weeks, people were forgetting, or at least, you know, again, most of the Mac scene, if you ask, do you remember Surf Kahuna? They're not going to even remember. So I guess it wasn't like documented in the annals of, freaking news groups, alt dot whatever AOL, Surf Kahuna is a piece of shit. It didn't get that bad. But I was trying to stick with my name. I was trying to, after being so depressed, my mom was like, I literally went to counseling because of this. Like, wow. No joke. My mom took me to counseling and was like, my kid's all fucked up. What's wrong with my kid? And I was trying to explain to her, but I mean, how's a parent going to understand that? Especially back in those days.
Did she think your buddy had anything to do with this? The one she thought was a toucher? She's like, was it him? Did he do this?
That is so hilarious that you say that. I've never thought about that, but holy shit, I bet she did. Oh my God, that's horrible, dude.
So the virus, is he the virus? What happened?
I know, right? Is he the virus? What did he do to my baby?
What he implant?
I can't wait. Oh, that's good. I can't wait to tell my mom that. She's gonna laugh so hard she's gonna cry. Okay, so I'm trying to stick it out. And then a couple weeks later, this actually may have been a month or two later. I was really trying. I'm literally in counseling at this point. And I'm trying to tell the counselor, like, look, I don't know how to explain this shit to you. So it was the counselor, by the way, who kept trying to tell me, like, well, you just need to, not be that person anymore. Like, just be someone else. And back then, even now, if you work in InfoSec, information security, or cybersecurity, like I do now and have for many years, reinventing yourself, that's not a thing. You don't what are you talking about? So anywho, I stick it out, maybe a solid 2+ months after this. All of a sudden, I try to log on to AOL one day, and I can't get online. It says my account has been suspended, right? And I'm like, all the stupid shit that I've done, and all of a sudden I get suspended. Like, what happened? So my assumption was that someone who had to deal with the little virus that I sent to everyone and thought I was just the worst person ever reported me to TOS or someone, right? Cat team, whoever the hell, and that got my account suspended, right? That's what I thought. So I call up support, and this is, by the way, probably the best part of this this origin story about dealing with this situation. It's just so stupid. But turns out my account was suspended because it had been used, quote unquote, it had been used, okay, bear with me, in a massive phishing campaign. Now, long story short, without going into all how I found it all out and had to deal with support and how I had to do my research and all this other crap, back in the day, going to Outlook Express and simply just changing the reply to email address and the display name was quote unquote spoofing an email, right? That was like high tech spoofing. This email was sent by Surf Kahuna, and if at AOL.com, and if you hit reply, your reply goes to Surf Kahuna. So obviously Surf Kahuna sent the email, duh. And basically that's what happened. And the phishing attempt, there were emails sent in that manner to thousands of people on AOL. No idea how they were targeted or what that target set was, if they were just people in random, chats, or I never found that out. But people had reported me, and AOL, actually, the support crew read out over the phone. They're like, yeah, here's the email. And they started reading it out. And it was just a perfect example of 90s phishing, but it wasn't just for passwords. It was for the entire fucking personal identities of people. So it was saying something about a government program that you're in violation of. And in order to fix that, you have to send the following. And the following was like, fucking might as well send a blood and stool sample, man. Like, it was everything, dude. We're talking like name, last 3 living locations, social security number, any credit cards you have, their credit card numbers. It wasn't just one credit card. Like, what do you use to pay for AOL? No. It was like everything. Something that you'd think 99% of people, at least in this day, would see and be like, are you kidding me? Like, this is so stupid. Well, okay, so I had to fight against the fact that I didn't do that. That's one. And I had to do it with support on the line. I was very surprised. I actually got them eventually to decide, you did not do this. Their fix to you did not do it. Now, keep in mind, my name had been dragged through the mud, and I was the asshole of the community, of the Mac community, right? I'm hoping, but also not hoping, that some listener out there is going, oh, you're that asshole? You're a surfer? I'm like, no, I really wasn't an asshole. I swear I wasn't an asshole. But, I went from that to now this. And so now I'm like, well, that's cool. Like, even further so, Surf Kahuna, whoever that is a massive piece of shit, right? It's just a horrible human being. Like, fucking great. So, and the Shyamalan twist, I did it all. I'm kidding.
So wait, this is just like mail header. Like, so I mean, actually, that's part of the RFC, right? The reply to and all that. And if they looked at the headers, like they did regular forensics, they would know.
They saw blatantly. Yeah, exactly. They saw blatantly where it actually originated, and had it not at all was.
But somebody took the time to collect all of these names.
Yep.
And then they decided, I'm going to write this email. So it almost sounds like somebody had like a Mac termer or something, and they like clicked the term button on you, and then it just sent a bunch of emails.
Yep. And some of you may have already guessed, but guess who it was?
Oh, so this is not the same. This is not the original virus guy. You're saying this is another person who was mad at you for.
No, it was. It was the original virus guy. He came back to make my life even more miserable. I found out eventually.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was someone who was pissed about the virus thing. I thought it was someone who I didn't know. It turns out that this buddy I had online, I have no idea to this day what the hell I did to this person. I was young, I was eager, and I was hungry. And I was like, if I learned something, and when we were working together, it was like, look what I found. And then, what did you find today? Like, there was nothing, I wasn't a dickish child. You know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to learn and be cool. I wanted to be cool. And this dude, for whatever reason, decided, like, fuck Ryan. Like, fuck Ryan. We're going to drag this dude into the dirt. I still don't know what bug got in this guy's, ass. But so anyways, the AOL support team eventually decided you can have your account back. They re-enabled my account. I go to log into my account, and I'm finally, it took a while, a week or two, I think, to get, and I'm calling them multiple times a day. I was a kid. That's all I had to do, right?
Hey, it's Ryan again. I really need to get on the internet today.
Yeah, it's what the fuck's going on? No, don't get me wrong. We had, account generators, and we had, one of the things that will never leave my memory is the Visa cert number 4019. 4019 was one of the most common seed generation numbers that we'd use for credit card generation back in the, at least in the Mac scene. So I always remember 4019, and I had a couple different algorithms and tools I would use. I had accounts at the yin yang, right? I could get on AOL. I wanted my damn account back. That's what I wanted. And so I get my account back. I log in. My mailbox is full. I go, what? I click on my mailbox, and there are a ton, whatever the maximum amount of email you could have in an AOL inbox was. That's what I had. And it was, I'm making this percentage up, but it was like 90%, fuck you, you're a piece of shit, die in a fire, I've reported you to the FBI, I've told AOL, all this other, whatever. And say 10%, like there were hundreds of replies that gave me all the fucking information. I'm not shitting you here. And I don't mean like someone's like, wow, here's my social and my address, but for the rest of it, no. I mean, I had so much PII in my inbox, so much. AOL didn't do a damn thing to try to delete it. And the funny thing was, the first thing I did is I called them and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? As at the time, 13, maybe 14-year-old, I'm just like, how stupid are you guys? Like, what are you doing? So that was one thing. I immediately started to realize, well, this name has really got to go now, right? There's no way I can continue to be this person. Because then whenever I was online with that account, I would get instant messages, and I was no longer getting it from the scene. I was now getting it from these people who were phished, right? Whether it was successful. I had some people just being like, hey, is that all taken care of? Like, I gave you all my shit.
What did you say to them?
I never responded to any of them. I didn't know what the hell to say, and I was basically scared of legal shit. I didn't know what to deal with at that age. I was like, let me just let AOL know. And my mom was like, I told my mom all about this shit. I was like, this could be like, I don't know if I'm going to get arrested. Like, I don't know, but I don't know what the hell to expect. So she started taking notes. She started contacting lawyers. Like, we didn't know what the hell to do at the time,
What kind of idiot sends information to somebody named Surf Kahuna?
Oh my
God.
God.
Oh, this seems legitimate. Just send it to Surf Kahuna.
Oh, so much information. Oh my God. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I already double clicked on one of these, and I just read through it. Holy shit, dude, this is like I could trace your fucking family lineage with it. Like, it was so crazy. So I start mass deleting the emails, and then more come in. I mass delete, more come in. They're still coming in. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I don't remember back in AOL. I don't remember if someone had a full email box and you tried to email them, would it tell you their email was full? Would it take the email and then SMTP would queue it for delivery later? I don't remember how their email system worked.
But there's the mail bombs, right? The whole point of the mail bomb was to fill up your mailbox so you couldn't get any more email.
Yes, exactly.
The retry is like 72 hours, right, for SMTP?
I don't remember how they had their relays set up. I'm saying I don't remember. I didn't know at the time. I work in cybersecurity now. I deal with SMTP relays and phishing attacks all the fucking time. But back then, I had no idea how that all worked. All I know is that, 2 weeks after the fact, I finally get my account back. I delete whatever 1,000, 10,000, whatever it was, emails, and they keep fucking rolling in. And I'm talking rolling in like the, fuck you piece of trash, and the, here's all my information. They just kept rolling in. So I eventually called in. My mom got on the phone. She started talking, legal bullshit like a parent who's freaking the hell out, especially in the 90s, right? Would do in this situation. Duh. And eventually they were like, do you want to just like shut this shit down? I'm like, yes, fucking kill it with fire. That is what led to me and my mommy coming up with the name Mac Diablo. Mac Diablo came from so she was trying to push the concept. See, I remember a lot of these things, and I don't remember the fucking guy's name who completely destroyed me as a child. Right, who destroyed not just my online Ryan, but like me as a person for a solid year. This fucked my little world up. God, it sounds sad saying it out loud, but I mean, that's why we're here, right? To tell the story. So she was all about Phoenix. You're the rising Phoenix out of the ashes. That makes sense, right? And I was like, I don't want to be a fucking bird. So what we came up with together was that I was going to be the Macintosh devil. And where that really came from was I felt like a fucking victim because I was an absolute victim, which, by the way, some people might be piecing together, oh shit, this guy works incident response these days. He helps victims. Yeah, no shit. Like, that's where I'm getting with this. But I was an absolute online victim, right? And I wanted to not have a victim persona. So I didn't want to be the Phoenix who was beaten and battered and all that shit. I wanted to be the Mac Devil. I wanted to have a bit of panache to the name, if you will. And so I came up with Mac Diablo. And my mom and I, came up with Mac Diablo. I made that name. I popped into the scene and I took a back seat from that point. I did not engage with anyone. I didn't trust anyone. I learned from that overall experience, many, they were negative at the time, but ended up being very positive things. But it destroyed who I was in that environment. Eventually, when I moved over to IRC/Hotline, oh gosh, Hotline was the business. When I moved away from AOL, then actually for a while I was still using AOL as my ISP before I got DSL. So don't get me wrong, I was still dialing in, right? But I was using then the PvP Connect, peer-to-peer Connect on the old Mac days, to actually just connect to quote unquote the internet, right? Not AOL's internet. And started doing Hotline and IRC stuff. Anyway, when I moved over there, then that's when I let Mac Diablo shine wherever I could, and I would engage with people and I was communicative and all that. Very few people, I never wanted anyone to know, never, not a damn person, outside of me and my mommy, that Mac Diablo was Surf Kahuna. Because to me, that was just, like it was a burned identity, just like a special agent's like, nah, that's burn, man. Like that was beyond burn. And I never wanted it to relate. And this is the first time I've ever even publicly been like, yeah, this is exactly what happened. This is how stupid it was, but yet this is how much it affected me at that young age.
Next time on AOL Underground.
It's like you look at these exploit writers who are on these darknet forums. I'm not in there talking with them about, oh, I found another Stack Overflow and a rock chain gadget to fuck over a VMware product. Let's use it to bring down companies and install ransomware. Fuck that. Rather, I'm like, hey, some asshole is exploiting known vulnerabilities in VMware Horizon. Let's go fucking help people who have that system and are about to be hit or have just been hit. Like, fuck that AOL guy. fuck the AOL guy, basically.
Welcome to cyberspace.